Welcome to Winning Paths, the Irish Field Archery monthly podcast, where victory is an adventure mapped with humour, guided by wisdom, and fueled by epic tales. Whether you're here to crush goals, sharpen your mindset, or just enjoy a good laugh, you're in the right place. Subscribe now, and let's tackle life's challenges together, with a wink, a grin, and a strategy that's anything but ordinary. Draw your bow, take aim, and let's hit those targets. Our material is original, born from our intellectual labour and countless hours spent researching, writing, and publishing. Each episode reflects our deep experience as writers and journalists, delivering content that's as insightful as it is engaging. Check for more at tfam.ie. In the grand cosmology of myths and ancient stories, there are questions which, though cloaked in the noble garb of philosophy, bear a vexing trait, so artfully posed that the answers, like the very wind, elude our grasp, slipping through our fingers like so many grains of sand. Or worse yet, these answers multiply like shadows at dusk, myriad and conflicting, ensnaring us in a tangled web of doubt and conjecture. It is the kind of conundrum that does naught to bolster the fragile edifice of our ego, but rather leaves us adrift upon a vast and stormy sea of uncertainty, where each answer begets yet another question, and the ceaseless cycle begins anew. But who was she, this Neith, who dared to bind the chaos of the cosmos into a pattern of her own making? Was she the warrior, shield and spear in hand, who charged headlong into the fray? Or was she the silent architect of fate, her hands deftly spinning the threads that would determine the rise and fall of kings? Dear reader, therein lies the rub, as the bard might say, for Neith was both and neither, more and less, a figure of contradictions as enigmatic as the Sphinx, and as sharp as the wit of a Dubliner on a chilly winter's night. Picture her now, if you will, striding through the sands of Egypt as if she owned them, which, in a way, she did. Her eyes, as keen as the falcon's, saw not just the present, but the past and future woven together like the finest linen, stretched out before her in an endless tangle. The very gods trembled before her, for she was old when the world was young, a being of such ancient wisdom and power that even the mightiest of them would bow their heads in her presence. And yet, despite all this, there was a certain humour to her, a glint in her eye that suggested she knew more than she let on, that perhaps this whole divine enterprise was, to her, a bit of a grand jest. Let us not get ahead of ourselves, for every story must have a beginning, and every beginning, no matter how humble, has the seeds of greatness within it. So cast your mind back, beyond the veil of time, to the days when Neith first emerged from the primordial waters, a being forged in the crucible of creation itself. There, in the darkness before the first dawn had broken, Neith stood alone, the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega of Egyptian myth. She was not birthed, as some gods were, from the union of other deities, nor was she fashioned from the dust of the earth. No, Neith simply was, as inevitable as the rising of the sun, and as unstoppable as the flow of the Nile. But what to do with such power, such ancient knowledge? For what good is it to hold the secrets of the universe if one cannot shape them, bend them to one's will? And so Neith, ever the cunning one, took up her loom and began to weave, her hands moving with the grace of a master craftsman, her mind sharp and focused, as if every thread were a life, every pattern a destiny. She wove the world itself into being, and with it, the fate of every creature that would walk, swim, or fly upon it. It was a task that would have overwhelmed a lesser being, but for Neith, it was as natural as breathing. Yet, for all her weaving, Neith was no mere seamstress of fate. No, she was a warrior born, with a heart as fierce as any lioness, and a will as unyielding as the pyramids that would one day rise in her honour. And so, when the time came for battle, she did not hesitate. Clad in armour that shimmered like the scales of a serpent, her spear as deadly as the venom of a cobra, she led her armies into the fray, with a roar that could shake the very foundations of the earth. Her enemies quaked before her, for they knew that to face Neith in battle was to face the very embodiment of war itself. But Neith's arsenal was not limited to the spear alone. Known as the mistress of the bow and the ruler of arrows, her mastery over archery was legendary. Neith's bow was not merely a weapon of war, but a symbol of her ability to protect and guide. In the ancient myth where Ra, the sun god, journeys through the underworld each night, Neith stands as his guardian, her arrows sharp and true, warding off the chaos serpent Apophis. With each arrow released, Neith ensures that the sun will rise again, that light will triumph over darkness, and that order will reign supreme. Her skill with the bow, like her weaving, was a testament to her control over the forces of life and death. Her bow, forged from the bones of ancient dread and strung with the sinews of the strongest beasts, was not merely a tool of battle, but a conduit of her divine will. Each arrow, fletched with feathers from the sacred birds of the Nile, carried with it the weight of destiny, striking with the precision of a judge's gavel, bringing balance to the chaos that threatened the cosmos. Neith's arrows were not mere projectiles. They were the threads of fate, stitching the fabric of the universe with each swift and silent strike. For war, like the loom, is not just about brute strength. It is about strategy, about outthinking one's opponent, about knowing when to strike and when to retreat. And in this, Neith was unmatched. She could see the patterns of the battlefield as clearly as she could see the threads of her loom, and she used this knowledge to devastating effect. Her victories were many, and her losses few, for she fought not just with her hands, but with her mind, her cunning, her wit. And when the battle was done, when the dust had settled and the dead had been carried away, Neith would return to her loom, to weave the next chapter of her story, the next twist of fate. Yet, here's a twist for you, one that might bring a smile to even the sternest of faces. For all her power, for all her wisdom, Neith was not immune to the whims of the heart. Indeed, there are those who say that she once found herself entangled in a love affair with none other than the trickster god, Set. Now, Set was a rogue, a scoundrel, the kind of deity who would nick the very stars from the sky if he thought it would get a laugh. And yet, for reasons known only to her, Neith found herself drawn to him, like a moth to a flame. Theirs was a tumultuous relationship, as you might imagine, full of fiery passion and bitter arguments, of stolen kisses and whispered secrets. But through it all, there was a strange kind of respect between them, a mutual understanding that, for all their differences, they were both players in the same cosmic game, both bound by the same rules of fate. And in the end, when their affair had run its course, they parted ways with no hard feelings, like two old friends who had simply gone their separate paths. And yet, dear reader, the story of Neith and Set did not end with their parting. Like all great tales, theirs was one of transformation, where the heartache of separation gave birth to a new understanding. For Neith, the warrior and weaver, learned that power, true power, was not in the ability to conquer, but in the strength to let go, to weave even the most painful of threads into the grand design of life. Set, too, came to understand that his role was not merely to create chaos, but to ensure that chaos had its place, that the universe would not stagnate but grow, adapt, and thrive. So, dear reader, we return to our question: what is it to wield power, and who is the true master? Is it the warrior who fights with spear and shield, who carves out her destiny with blood and steel? Or is it the weaver who shapes the very threads of existence, who sees the world not as it is, but as it could be? In Neith we find both, and in both we find the answer. For power is not just the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to create, to shape, to guide. It is the balance between force and cunning, between action and thought, between the sword and the loom. In Neith, that balance was perfect. She was the warrior who fought for her people, who protected them with all the strength she could muster. But she was also the weaver, the one who shaped their destiny, who guided them through the dark times and into the light. She was, in every sense of the word, a goddess, a being of such power and grace that even the gods themselves bowed before her. Then, let us not forget, as we take our leave of Neith and her tale, that even the mightiest of gods have their moments of doubt, their moments of weakness. For in the end, even Neith, with all her power, was just a thread in the great tangle of the universe, a part of something greater than herself. And perhaps, just perhaps, that is the true lesson of her story, that no matter how powerful we may be, no matter how wise or strong, we are all, in the end, just threads in the great loom of life, woven together into a pattern that we may never fully understand. Neith's story, much like the myths of other cultures, offers us insights into the nature of power, wisdom, and the balance between creation and destruction. Her tale is not merely one of a goddess who wields power with skill and precision. It is a narrative that echoes through the corridors of mythologies around the world, where creation and destruction are two sides of the same coin, where the weaver of fate is as much a warrior as she is a nurturer. Consider, for instance, the tale of the Norse goddess Frigg, who, like Neith, is both a weaver of destinies and a protector of her people. Frigg, with her spindle, spins the threads of life, knowing full well that every life she touches is part of a greater whole. And yet, she is also a figure of immense power, a queen among gods, whose wisdom and foresight guide the actions of those who follow her. Just as Neith's arrows strike true to protect the sun god Ra, so too does Frigg's wisdom ensure that the balance of the world is maintained, even in the face of inevitable destruction. Or let us turn to the story of the Hindu goddess Durga, who, like Neith, embodies the dual aspects of creation and destruction. Durga, with her many arms, each bearing a weapon, rides into battle to vanquish the forces of chaos. Yet she is also a mother, a protector, a goddess who nurtures the very life she defends. In her, we see the same balance that Neith embodies, the ability to wield power with both ferocity and grace, to destroy that which threatens the order of the cosmos, while simultaneously nurturing the life that depends on that order. These myths, whether they hail from the cold north or the warm lands of India, remind us that the stories of gods and goddesses are reflections of the struggles and triumphs that define the human experience. They teach us that power is not merely about dominance or victory, but about the delicate balance that must be maintained between opposing forces, chaos and order, destruction and creation, love and war. Neith's story, like those of Frigg and Durga, offers us a profound lesson that the true measure of power lies not in the ability to control, but in the wisdom to understand and guide. Just as the threads of fate are woven into a greater design that is more than the sum of its parts, so too are our lives interwoven with the lives of others, creating a complex and beautiful pattern that reflects the world around us. As we reflect on Neith's tale, we carry with us the wisdom she imparts. Like the ancient proverb that says, "The weaver and the warrior both serve the loom of fate," we are reminded that our own lives, with all their challenges and triumphs, are part of a greater story. We are both the weavers and the warriors of our own destinies, shaping our world with every choice we make, every thread we spin. Let us find inspiration in Neith and in the countless other myths that speak to the universal truths of existence. For, in the end, it is not the glory of battle or the beauty of the design that endures, but the wisdom we gain and the legacy we leave behind, a legacy that, like Neith's arrows, strikes true and leaves a mark on the fabric of the cosmos. Now, let us turn our gaze from the ancient sands of Egypt to the evergreen hills of Ireland, where the sun rises over Thurles, a sleepy town where the most excitement one might expect is an impassioned hurling match or a slightly scandalous pub quiz. But not for Aisling Deegan, a woman whose life was anything but ordinary, a veritable whirlwind of schemes, shenanigans, and more twisted plots than a Shakespearean tragedy penned by a playwright on a bender. Aisling, much like Neith herself, was a force of nature, balancing the precarious line between order and chaos with the ease of a juggler tossing flaming torches and razor-sharp knives. Aisling grew up in a modest home in Thurles, the daughter of a butcher with a penchant for Shakespeare, and a baker whose loaves were as heavy as his heart. From a tender age, Aisling displayed an uncanny knack for strategy, with a mind as sharp as her mother's finest kitchen knives and an eye that missed nothing. She could outwit her classmates, out-hurl the lads, and her precision in every endeavor, from crafting the perfect pie crust to devising the most intricate practical jokes, was the stuff of local legend. Little did the unsuspecting townsfolk know they had a modern-day Neith in their midst, a woman destined to stir the sleepy town from its slumber. Her parents, proud yet perplexed, often wondered where their daughter's extraordinary talents had come from. "She's a general in the kitchen and a Machiavelli in the playground," her mother would muse, shaking her head in bemused wonder as she watched Aisling orchestrate a perfectly executed coup against the local schoolyard bully. But it wasn't just her cunning and strategy that set Aisling apart. There was another skill, one that harkened back to ancient warriors and gods, the art of archery. Aisling, with her sharp eye and steady hand, could split an apple from 50 paces, hit a bullseye blindfolded, and draw a bow with the grace and precision of an Olympian. This skill wasn't just a pastime, it was her weapon, her method of keeping the chaos at bay, of asserting her will upon the world. The townsfolk marveled at her talent, often gathering to watch her practice, awed by the way her arrows would whistle through the air as if they were guided by the gods themselves. Aisling's first real test of her strategic prowess came not in the classroom, but in the family bakery, where a horde of audacious mice had taken up residence. These weren't just any mice. They were the sort that could make a swift getaway with a loaf of bread without leaving so much as a crumb behind. But Aisling, sharp as a dagger, wasn't about to let them have the last laugh. She devised a series of traps, each more ingenious and devilish than the last, turning the bakery into a veritable labyrinth of doom for the unwelcome guests. When her traps failed, as they occasionally did, she resorted to her bow, setting up a mock hunt within the bakery's walls. With arrows tipped in soft cork, she hunted the vermin down, her arrows finding their mark with unerring accuracy. It wasn't long before the mice either surrendered to her superior intellect or fled in search of easier pickings, leaving the bakery and Aisling victorious. Yet, the Deegan household had more than just four-legged invaders to contend with. Enter Orla, a magpie as old as the hills and twice as cunning, who had adopted the family as her own. Orla was no ordinary bird, with a sharp beak for insults and an insatiable appetite for shiny objects. She was a menace to all things silver. Nothing was safe from Orla's kleptomaniacal tendencies, not the family's heirloom spoons, nor the silver candlesticks that Aisling's mother polished religiously every Sunday. Orla would swoop in, cawing out barbed comments and making off with her glittering prizes, much to the chagrin of the Deegans. Aisling, however, saw potential in Orla's mischief. Where others saw a nuisance, she saw an opportunity, a chance to turn the magpie's thieving ways to her advantage. With a bit of clever training and a few strategically placed bribes, Aisling transformed Orla into a spy of unparalleled skill. While Horace the parrot gathered gossip from the townsfolk, Orla pilfered trinkets and treasures from under their noses, bringing back not just baubles, but secrets hidden in letters, lockets, and loose-lipped conversations. As her network of informants grew, Aisling's reputation spread like wildfire. She became Thurlis's answer to Neith, a master of the loom and bow, weaving complex plots and striking down her foes with devastating precision. It wasn't long before a local television presenter, Seamus O'Flannery, caught wind of her exploits. With his keen eye for a story that could sell even the most boring of products, he decided Aisling was the perfect subject for a new segment on his show. Aisling Deegan, Thurlis's very own warrior goddess, the program was called, and it was an instant hit. The camera adored Aisling, and she took to the limelight with the natural grace of a lioness surveying her domain. She demonstrated her cunning traps, her archery prowess, and shared her strategic insights. Horace and Orla were stars in their own right, Horace with his gossip, and Orla with her collection of pilfered treasures, including, much to Aisling's amusement, a local politician's prized silver pocket watch. The viewers were captivated, and soon Aisling became a household name, her face plastered across television screens and newspapers, from Cork to Donegal. But with fame came fortune, and with fortune came complications. Aisling found herself navigating the treacherous waters of celebrity life, where every move was scrutinized, every word twisted by the press to fit a narrative of scandal and intrigue. She handled it all with the same deftness she had used to rid the bakery of mice, but the higher she climbed, the more precarious her position became. The downfall, as it often does in tales of hubris and ambition, began innocently enough, with a whisper, a rumor, a slip of the tongue from Horace, who, in a moment of ill-advised enthusiasm, squawked out a particularly scandalous piece of gossip during a live broadcast. "Aisling's got a secret lover," he crowed, sending shockwaves through the town and beyond. The press pounced like vultures on a fresh carcass, and soon the rumor took on a life of its own, growing wilder and more outrageous with each retelling. As the storm of scandal swirled around her, Aisling found herself betrayed not just by the press, but by Orla, who, true to her nature, had filched a letter containing the details of a private rendezvous, innocent enough but damning in the court of public opinion. The letter fell into the wrong hands, and before she knew it, Aisling's carefully woven life began to unravel. The townsfolk, once so admiring, turned suspicious, and even her parents, bewildered by the sudden turn of events, could only watch in silence as their daughter's life spiraled out of control. Aisling, always the strategist, tried to regain the upper hand, but it was as if the very forces she had so skillfully manipulated had turned against her. Yet, in true Shakespearean fashion, Aisling's tale was not one of simple tragedy, but of bittersweet redemption. With her empire crumbling around her, she turned to the one thing she had always trusted, her wit. In a final, desperate gambit, she called a press conference, where she stood before the cameras, not as a warrior or a goddess, but as herself, unadorned and unapologetic. "There are no heroes or villains in life," she began, her voice steady as she locked eyes with the crowd. "Only people, trying their best to survive in a world that's as unpredictable as the weather, and twice as cruel." The speech, raw and heartfelt, struck a chord with the public. Slowly, the tide of opinion began to turn, and while she never regained her former glory, Aisling found a new kind of peace in the quiet corners of Thurles, where she was simply Aisling, no longer a goddess but something more real, more human. But the tale did not end there, for even in the quietude of her new life, Aisling's old talents did not lie dormant. She continued to practice her archery, though now with a different purpose, no longer to assert power or control, but as a meditative act, a way to find balance in a world that had shown her both its light and dark sides. Her bow, once an instrument of precision and power, became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that true strength lies not in the ability to strike down one's enemies, but in the capacity to endure, to adapt, and to rise again after the fall. And as for Orla and Horace, the old magpie, still as sharp-tongued and thieving as ever, now contented herself with stealing the odd silver spoon, while Horace, ever the gossip, continued to regale anyone who would listen with tales of Thurles' very own warrior goddess, a legend that would live on long after the cameras had stopped rolling. Aisling, in her quiet moments, would sometimes watch them from her window, a faint smile playing on her lips as she reflected on the strange twists and turns of her life. The girl who had once outwitted mice and charmed a town had lived many lives in one, each as vivid and intricate as the last. Aisling, who once stood as a beacon of strategy, wit, and archery prowess, had found in her rise and fall the true measure of herself, not in the titles bestowed upon her, or the gossip that swirled around her, but in the quiet strength to continue, to embrace the journey with all its chaos and order. Thus, our Machiavelli in a skirt, once the warrior goddess of Thurles, became a tale not just of triumphs and tribulations, but of the human spirit's capacity to adapt, to transform, and to find peace in the most unexpected places. And so, her legend lived on, not just in the stories told by a gossipy parrot, or in the shiny trinkets hoarded by a cunning magpie, but in the hearts of those who knew her, who remembered her not just as a symbol of power, but as a reflection of themselves, flawed, resilient, and ever capable of finding new beginnings.